Okay, so our next speaker studies a threat surface that you wear on your face. How many of you have ever used a VR? I mean, apparently everyone in here is risk averse. Okay. Okay, so he is going to be showing how AR VR systems can be exploited and how they have a framework they created called REALITYCHECK that maps immersive attacks to attack. So please welcome Mohammed Shoaib.
But in this talk, I'm going to focus more on how we use attack in this rather than talking about how the system works. And as the title suggests, we use the system to investigate AR/VR attacks. These devices have only been here for a couple of years, and there's very little research on what the harms of this technology are, so we're going to get into that today. Little bit about myself. I am a PhD candidate. I'm a fourth-year student at University of Virginia. My research focus is system security, and I'm advised by Professor Wajihul Hassan. And this is my research focus. I work in auditing, logging, and system provenance, and I also work with attack detection, and evasion. So my first paper was this AR/VR attack reconstruction on which this talk is based. It was accepted at Usenic Security. And my other paper in the auditing field is the tamper evident logging one. I also built another system which basically uses graph level events to detect CVE exploitation. In that paper, I argue, it's not published yet, it's under submission, but in that work, I argue that SIEM rules, they lead to a huge alert burden, and if you kind of use graphs or multi-event graphs to detect threats, then you, specifically CVE exploitation, then you end up with fewer false alerts. And on the current project that I'm working on is SIEM rule evasion. And I will be basing this talk on this paper that I published. Some of the recent highlights, don't want to brag for a long time, but yeah, I had some of the achievements. One of the notable ones that I want to mention is my undergrad mentee. He won a CRA Outstanding Undergrad Researcher Award, which was a huge deal for me because I haven't ever mentored anyone before my PhD, so it was nice to see. So let's get into the talk. These are the contents of the talk today. And let's first talk about why make AR/VR ecosystem secure. A little bit of background on this. You can see that the market has been booming. Apple just announced their next biggest AR/VR headset, which is the Reality Pro. And with that, there comes like new attack vectors. And what are these attack vectors? The first one that I want to discuss is this guy, this cartoon. You can see there's like a chair in his way. He just took off his device and he noticed that there's a chair that appeared out of nowhere. Now this chair didn't appear out of nowhere, and we'll discuss why that chair is there in a few slides. I'm going to focus on this attack more, but yeah, this is one of the attacks that the user faced. Another one is, this is quite intuitive. When you're wearing a headset, when you have haptic feedback controllers in your hand, you are prone to cyber sickness, dizziness, photosensitive epilepsy. And the last one I want to discuss, this is also a key attack, where you basically exfiltrate sensor or user data or credentials. And you would think that this is a traditional attack that you can do in mobile devices. Why is it new? So there's the attack vector is quite different. In AR/VR, you can basically do this by just tracking users' movement. There's some papers on how head movement data can lead to some credential breach. And also there's some papers that say and that argue that if you use invisible digital objects in between the user's controller and the screen or their keyboard, you can also like record their keystrokes, which is also a huge problem. So there's all of these attacks, but there's little work that's been done, and we want to kind of fix that. So first, so to like do this study, we first went on to see what attacks there are. So we went on to Google Scholar, DBLP. We checked all these resources. We checked GitHub. We checked manufacturer logs, and like doing everything, we came up with this kind of a 25 attack table, and we map all these attacks to MITRE ATT&CK as well, which I will go into later. There's a link to the, there's a QR code to the paper here, and I'm not going to discuss each and every one of these attacks. I'm just going to go into one in detail. So if you want to check these out, you can see the paper. So this is our attack example. So it was the first attack that I discussed with the guy who was like, who had a chair in his way, and let's discuss why the chair got in the way. So first of all, what the adversary did here was, this is a system call graph, you can say, and we call this an attack story graph, and I will discuss why. So first of all, you can see on the Windows PC side, the attacker gets an initial foothold of the Windows PC. This is your traditional attack. Then they do lateral movement to move onto the AR/VR device. And you can see this mal.exe application, it's moving onto the device using a USB event. And then the attacker, what it does is it does on-device manipulation, which is basically the attacker changes the guardian boundary around the user, so you have a virtual boundary. And so the chair did not move, but the boundary did. And the user set the boundary before while wearing the headset, and then after some time, the boundary changed, and the user didn't change it, the attacker did. So the chair came in the user's way, and they were prone to physical harm. Now, the last thing that happened here was the symptom. The user's controller bumped into an object, and then it raised an alert that, oh, there's been a controller collision, and this was the magnitude and duration. So basically, this was one of the attacks that you don't see in mobile systems, and we need to study this. And that's why I'm mentioning here, is mobile attack enough? Okay, we saw the first part of the Windows attack graph. That was fine. We could like use all these tactics to investigate that. But then when you talk about the other stuff that was going on, for instance, perception manipulation, this spatial boundary that I was talking about, and there's other side channels that I discussed before, these are not specifically found in your MITRE attack in the mobile version of it. So what we did was we extended it. We used those 25 attacks that I talked about, and we extended this matrix. It's not very readable here. You can check the paper to read it. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail of this, but I will tell you the attack that we discussed. It was here, alter virtual boundary coordinates, and the procedure is also mentioned there. So we tried our best to map these attacks to tactics, techniques, and procedures. These are like, this is a perception manipulation attack family. Then this is a physical harm and key logging interface attack. So after doing that, what did we use the matrix for? This is what we did in the paper. And I'm not going to discuss that in detail. We took this attack matrix and we built an ontology around it. For instance, you have all these tactics, techniques, procedures. We built tactics, techniques, procedures for these novel attack vectors that we saw. And then we have an investigation pipeline, which it's in the detail in the paper. And then that gives us an attack causal graph, which shows how the attack started, what was the root cause of the attack, and if you have a symptom, you can track its ramifications. So this is what we did with attack. And you can see that we, like the AR/VR side, we tagged it with tactics, techniques, and procedures. So in conclusion, this was the work that I did for this paper. And if you're interested in this, please feel free to check out the paper and the code. And if you're interested in this area in collaborations, I'm happy to do that. And if you're interested in any of the other projects that I mentioned in the start, I'd be happy to work with you. Thank you.
They get to ask you questions now.
Oh, I see.
So I want to start by repeating Amy's question from the earlier. How many of you have used an AR/VR headset? Okay. Now, how many of you will never again use an AR/VR headset?
How many of us will use it more?
Go ahead, Ivan, ask your question.
So I love looking at the structure of this. So are you proposing that we add AR and VR as a platform under mobile, or are you proposing that we would extend it, whether in our collections or in the official, or are you proposing that we extend it as a separate?
I think
Are you proposing that we add AR/VR as a collection under mobile or as its own platform?
So that's a very good question, thank you. And as I mentioned, some of the tactics and techniques that we see in AR/VR are from mobile, but some of them are not. So maybe an extension of mobile would work. In the paper, we provide the matrix that has part of the mobile tactics and techniques, but when in the procedures, we add the procedures that you can perform on an AR/VR device. So if you want to add procedures to the techniques that you have in mobile, that is fine, but like we can do it either way, I would say. Hope that answers your question.
So at what stage of the attack do you find that the technology on the AR/VR device becomes unique and distinct from mobile or any other platform?
So as I mentioned, there's multiple egress paths with AR/VR devices. You can do lateral movement from windows to the device. And then when you get on the device, sometimes when there's something going on with the digital objects or the virtual environment of the user, then in that case, we definitely need to extend the matrix in order to do any kind of investigation. But if you see the other part of it, the windows, and sometimes like for very basic attacks like credential access, which just need like system access, that's not like impossible to investigate without the AR/VR matrix. Yeah.
Okay.
So on the credential stuff makes sense, but on the one where you're like boundary changing, do we have any knowledge of like, was that somebody pranking that person, or is that like a thing that people do for fun? Because that's why I'm going to start playing more, is to see if anyone does it to me.
So the question is, in the example you gave of boundary changing, is that for real? Is that a prank? Come on.
So that's an interesting question. There has been like, this attack has happened out in the wild. So I'm assuming some adversary did it. But yeah, it's interesting what the what their intentions are. So maybe someone's pranking it. Maybe they know the person.
Go to the Office VR.
The APT called Little Brother. Thank you very much, Mohammed. Watch out for chairs.
Nice joke.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.